When we joined the military, a vast majority of us wanted to serve something greater than ourselves. We wanted to serve our country, or we wanted to make our parents proud or our grandparents proud, maybe a legacy thing, right? My purpose was to serve the country, serve the flag, and if necessary, die for my country.
That's what I think about is just like how much you and I have in common, through life experiences, but also like philosophies in life and perspectives. And, that's a lot of the stuff that I'm excited to kind of dive into with you today.
Yeah.
And what inspired me, really, I'd been thinking about having you on the show, but what really inspired me most recently is that you've started a nonprofit and you've left your military service and you took a couple years in there to get lost and then get found again through a new mission and a new purpose, which is the Twin Screws Foundation.
Yes.
And I was reading your mission statement again, before the show, and I just love what you represent. So, tell us a little bit about that foundation.
Absolutely. So Twin Screws, just the name in general. Let me how it started, right? So last year, I'm an avid backcountry hunter. So every fall I disappear into the woods. I'm gearing up for an elk hunt right now in Arizona in 15 days.
Yeah, it's that time of year, isn't it?
It's that time of year, and I always tell Nicole, I go, don't plan anything like weddings or nothing. Just you're going to be going not plus one if you go.
Yeah.
But anyway, last year I invited a friend who had never been hunting ever, and it was an archery. We did archery elk up in Colorado, and I had another friend who lives up there in Meeker, little teeny town. Um, and he hunts every year with some old Navy buddies who turns out they're all old, retired Master Chiefs. My buddy was a retired Master Chief. So here we are. We are a group of guys with all retired E9s, right? And then I invited a young man who used to work for me when he was an E6. His wife was our ombudsman, right? Our liaison to command and everything else like that. And then another friend of mine who I kind of met through a podcast, actually. He had a submarine specific one, and they had never done anything like this either. So they all came out. And that happened. They both live in Colorado, so it made it a little easier. And we went and we did this, and we had fun, and we talked around the fire. We had a couple of beverages. We had just that spark of old military camaraderie and the shared experiences we once had. We got to kind of not relive them, but talk about them and see how they've exaggerated over the years, right? But when we got done, we're sitting around and we're like, we need to try to do this not just for us, but I wanted to share it. And the other retired nines were like, well, how do we do that? We don't know how to do that. And a lot of guys, when they do retire, um, they like to hang up the responsibility. I want to say, because I don't want to talk bad or make it sound disparaging, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of guys,
Well, they're tired.
they're tired.
You
They
know.
want to hang up that responsibility piece, right? They wear
Yeah.
the hat, but they want to hang up the responsibility piece, which I fully understand. My problem is, I think I'm still too young to hang up that responsibility piece, right? I was ready to hang up the career because just, military and it's time, and you're like, okay, well, I'm tired of this. But there's still, I need, there's still sailors out there, and there's Marines, and there's soldiers, and airmen, and spacemen.
Yeah. Nowadays. Yeah.
Out there that still look for something, right? And I think the active duty component, and which was part of Twin Screws, is right. I wanted to pair active duty with a veteran into a space so we can actually talk about issues, what an active duty sees, what a veteran sees, and the experiences too, and then maybe hopefully imprint on each other and learn from each other, right? And so
Yeah.
I still think I think the active duty side is very limited of what they can do, right? So one of our primary things that we focus on is suicide awareness, veteran suicide, which is horrific, right? The numbers, to look at the numbers on a piece of paper is it's scary when you see it. And I will say that every single veteran and every single active duty, and maybe I'm speaking for out of turn, have thought about it at some point. right?
Yep.
And then there's a difference in there of what decision they make not to make that final decision. Well, the active duty side of it is very cookie cutter, right? If something happens, and you know this, right? If there is an ideation or an actual attempt, or not only attempt, but the person succeeds, it's a by the book response that they have to do, right? And there's a legal aspect to it. They have to do it. They have to do it this way. They have to get the people together this way. They have to do that, right? But there's also the mission piece of it, where if you dwell on it more than a week or even 2 weeks, you're failing at the mission now, right? You have to be able to compartmentalize it. You have to put it in the back seat. You have to be able to move on.
Yeah.
Which in our younger days probably wasn't really an issue, right? Because and it's probably not an issue for any younger person necessarily, right? They can pack it away a little bit more. So when you get a little bit older, the things start surfacing.
Right.
Today's day and age, we always talk about with therapy and everything else like that. Well, therapy is very limited on the waterfront. And I'll speak the Navy terms specifically, is we have in Groton, Connecticut, there is 18 submarines, 150 sailors per submarine. That's a lot of people. And then you have all the supporting commands that support those submarines. And you have the training commands up the hill. Then you have a hospital. You have all these things. There's 4 therapists.
Wow.
Right? So
yeah,
you're booked. You're very, very well booked. So when things start happening, right, you're left to get creative on how to help people. And that's where I think this foundation can kind of come in and be one of those things. I'm not going to be I'm not the optimist where I say we're going to prevent or we're going to stop veteran suicide, right? We're going to end this epidemic. We're going to battle and we're going to fight and we're going to win. I'm sorry, that's not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
And using those words, I think, is actually very, it defeats the purpose of it, because what happens is if you keep doing those, somebody else now takes their life, you just got beat, right? Now you're defeated, and then you become a defeatist, and then you're chasing your tail, and then you're becoming more reactive, and you just lose steam. So if we can just maybe have one person change their mind, right? Make a decision. Maybe delay a decision. That's a win. That's a huge win for me. And the organization, and I think all veterans, right? It's just amazing. And I think my dog is about to bark at a cow walking by.
That's funny. My dog got kennel cough from the daycare, and so she's been puking and coughing.
Oh,
so
no.
If you hear her, so it's we've got maybe having the same issue, but
oh no. Yeah. Cough. I just got cows that she likes. She's surprised. Like, okay, it's another cow, dog. No, don't be surprised. But anyway, so that's kind of where Twin Screws came from, and it got birthed from that. And then going through we actually became an actual No Kidding Foundation in February of this past year. So I got the 501 letter, got that actually organized, and what goes into establishing a 501(c)(3). It sucks. It is. It's a business. It's a legit business, right? You got your articles of incorporation. You have your bylaws that you have to have. You have to have this. How many shares are there? I don't know, shares, right? And then you got to get people on board. We got board members, and then, unlike a regular business, I don't have a product to sell, right? So now I have to fundraise, and I feel like I'm holding up my cup a lot, like I'm shaking it on the end of the corner. I thought about maybe trying to make, I think I've got asked for like swag and like hats and shirts and run like a part of a business. But then you put it back into there, but I have to find the right accountant or right lawyer, because that's like legal money laundering, right? So I got to figure out the right way to do that, so I'm not getting into the racketeering piece.
Well, I think you nailed it. Like, what I went to grad school for was community administrative leadership and in the nonprofit sector. And so and people don't realize this, that it is a business. That's where I learned everything about, I'm a business owner now. I don't work in nonprofits anymore, not directly anyway.
Right.
But no money, no mission. right? That's what it
Correct.
comes down to. And if it, you've got to learn how to make money, raise money, and allocate that money properly to in order to at least run a successful nonprofit. There's a lot of really unsuccessful ones out there,
There's
but
a lot of unsuccessful. There's a lot of successful ones that aren't doing what they advertise, right? So if you look like if you take a Google veteran nonprofit, not just
oh,
in Texas but the country,
oh
it's
yeah,
completely it's a saturated market. And Wounded Warrior, I'll use Wounded Warrior. Wounded Warrior's gotten better. They had a big scandal. I don't know if you remember that
yeah,
about.
they had their issues, but they turned it around.
They did. But if you looked at their operating costs like back then, right? I think it was only like 15% of whatever they earned went to veterans. The other 85% went to operating costs. What is that? That's
Yeah,
advertising, which they did a good job, but also it's a veteran organization, so a lot of people will do free advertising for them, so they don't necessarily have to pay. But the salaries, right, was I don't right now it's my operating costs are about 98%. So any kind of advertising I do, if I made those flyers, we reprinted those flyers by the way. That will get written off.
yeah,
That $50 right there is an
yeah.
operating cost. I don't take it. I don't want to take a salary. I have no desire to take a salary from this thing ever. A good friend of mine, I had a thankfully got to chat with him yesterday. Brian Shantosh. He goes as Tosh, right? He's the chairman president of Big Fish, the Big Fish Fund,
Yeah.
and they are they've been successful, and they're becoming more and more successful every year. And the more they do this, and it is. I got involved with them 2 years ago now, and that's what I wanted to model this after was kind of that, and then operate not under their umbrella, but on along the same lines as their focus, and then there's my focus, which is the active duty side of it, right? And how
Right.
we bring that active duty thing because I still have friends. Because I'm still very, uh, I'm only 2 years removed from active duty, so
Right.
all of my friends now, all my peers that stayed in, are running the Navy, right?
Right.
They're legit in charge of it. So we got Fleet Master, he's a Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy. I served with. So I'm trying to leverage that now before they decide to retire, and then I'm kind of like swimming through and trying to make new introductions and swim through that legality and the bureaucracy of what the Navy is.
Yeah. Well, there's two things that really stood out for me in your mission statement, and I'm going to paraphrase it a little bit,
Yeah.
but they are near and dear to my heart, which is the word purpose, and you didn't say this directly, but to me, meaningful community. And you kind of talked about this a little while ago when you were kind of talking about your background and everything, is just and how you got the nonprofit started is how people come together to support each other and lift each other up, and you'll never know the really horrific outcomes that you prevented. You'll only know what actually happened.
Right.
And so when people wrap themselves around each other, and maybe multiple people wrap themselves around an individual, beautiful things happen. And those two things are really important to me. So I'd love to kind of hear just a little bit about like what is that mission statement and what is that vision for the organization?
So you're talking about my purpose, right? The everybody's purpose.
Yes.
Yeah. So when I wrote that, and what is very very important to me, and I think it's important to, and I'm gonna speak to veterans, right? We joined when we joined the military. A vast majority of us wanted to serve something greater than ourselves, right? So we wanted to serve our country, or we wanted to make our parents proud, or our grandparents proud, maybe a legacy thing, right? And then there was a reason behind that. And when I joined, it was to make my dad proud. My grandfather was he was a naval aviator in World War II. My other grandfather was
Cool.
a master sergeant in the Air Force, right? And there was some legacy there. And my dad was in the Air Force too, even though he loved the Navy, but he was in Vietnam. And so my purpose was to serve the country, serve the flag, right? And if necessary, die for my country. right? And I remember very vividly. I don't know if you remember this when you went through MEPS, right? And you're raising your hand and we're swearing our oath before we go off the boot camp. I remember in the middle of that oath, I don't remember the oath, and well, I do now just because I said that oath probably 10,000 times. But that day, I don't remember anything I really said, but I remember thinking, I'm gonna take a bullet for the country. That's
Wow.
what the only thought in my mind, and I was fucking terrified when I thought that, and I kept doing it. Went through boot camp, and everything was fine, right? But I remember that, and so that my purpose was that, and how terrified I was, and I kept doing it. And so I'm like, okay, this flag is more important than anything I've ever done, right? Because it represents. Well, I don't need to tell you what the flag represents,
Yeah.
right? There's a lot of blood in flying that American flag, and but when you're brand new in the service, right? I'm going to say, and it's not a set time frame, but 8 years, 6 years, whatever it is, you're kind of going through the motions of the service. You're going to work every single day. You're doing your job every day. Let me rephrase that, right? You're doing your job every single day. You say we would say the Sailor's Creed. I'm a United States sailor. I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Right?
Yeah.
We would do that, but they were words, right? And
Right.
and there's a point in your career, and it could be earlier. Mine was not earlier. Mine was about the 10, 12 year point where those words actually became another purpose for me. Right. So before it was always a flag, and I was always very proud to deploy, and I was very excited to do things and do things with and work 20 hours a day if I had to. And I did. I quite regularly did that. But it became a different. It is no longer about me and the country. It is about my sailors who actually work for me. And so then my focus became big, broad, and it became actually laser focused on the 10 individuals that were standing in front of me expecting me to teach them.
Right.
So, right. So that's if I then I figured, okay, if I can make them better versions or better operators, better technicians, maybe not better people. That really, you never know. But it was only 10 guys, right? But you also know that one guy going, oh, I went on deployment, or we went out for a week and a half, and that stripper I was dating, she just completely cleaned my house out. You gave her the keys to your house? Well, it was cold outside, so where's your dog? Well, I don't know, but the stripper's got it. Oh my God, love America, dude. But okay, let's teach you some life skills, right? So there was life
Yeah.
skills, better operators, better technicians, better submariners, better humans. And I really liked it. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, this is really speaking to me. And then that's what kind of permeated from that E6 at that 10-year point, and then it propelled me all the way through the senior ranks, right?
Right.
And it wasn't. I never once tried to get promoted after that. Never tried. It like, hey, you just made E7. I go, how? How did I make chief? I never put in for that. Like, well, you took the test. I'm like, well, you told me to. And then E8. How did I make that? Well, I don't know. You're ready for it. Okay. Hey, you're going to be in charge of a submarine. What the? Okay. Hey, here's your E9.
Yeah.
What the hell? Guys, knock it off. Stop promoting me. Um, but it was very, very odd. But I think the people that I worked for saw my desire to help other people. And so that's where it came, right? So one purpose is always going to speak louder than the other. And
Right.
that is very important to me, right? The purpose of serving the country, serving the flag is still there. That will go with me till the day I die, and my grave in the back of my house, right? I've already got a cemetery plot picked out. But that other purpose is something that I can laser focus on, and I know I can do that. And if I can help people become better versions of themselves, the broader purpose, the flag, the country, will become better.